Right, thank you very much, everybody. Second panel of this morning. I hope everyone is still feeling fresh. Appreciate we're lots of content this week, lots of stuff going on. This is the first time this week I've mentioned the word AI, which is exciting.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It's an exaggeration. It's not the first time I've mentioned AI, but we're moving the content on. Previously, we're talking about these brand partnerships as some of the questions. You know, really the topic on everybody's lips this week is about AI and what it means for our industry. To discuss that, we are in an incredibly privileged position. We have Claire Davidson, who is the Executive Strategy Director for Twogether, which is a B2B focused agency, and Suzi Watford, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at The Washington Post. Thank you very much for hosting us as well. Thank you. So, AI, there's a lot of different ways into this conversation. So we're going to start on an agency perspective with Claire. To what extent is this already affecting your work at an agency? Is it already affecting day-to-day work, or is it still a bit theoretical at the moment?
Yeah, no, hugely.
Right.
I guess for the last year, if not a bit longer, we've actually had teams dedicated on how we're going to use AI. Mm-hmm. As we all know, AI is changing and moving along very fast, but we have a number of use cases that we've been developing out. So I head up our strategy department. We've also got a full creative department, media departments. So each department is looking at its own use cases. So for my instance, is how do we use AI to improve the insights we get around audiences? You know, we're looking at synthetic personas, those sort of pieces. And also, how do we help it, you know, use it to help scale? From a creative department point of view, we're looking at potentially how we're using it to accelerate maybe developing creative ideas. And then there's the efficiencies and scale piece there. And then it's just providing more insights. But we spent a lot of time as an agency in putting some AI sort of guardrails around things as well from a safety point of view. Yep. We have different power user groups that are trained. So we've got our own version of ChatGPT, which, you know, to use, you need to be fully trained. You need to understand the implications. Yeah, you know, we're looking at sort of how does it augment what we do as humans rather than replace. And I know the previous panel as well was talking about transparency, which is really important. Yeah. So even if we're using it to improve meeting notes, you know, like our client services team with clients and briefing, we just need to really sort of make sure we're checking it. I think we all know there's a lot of hallucination still happening with Gen AI. There's a lot of challenges there, so we do still make sure it's all human checked as well.
I think that's interesting. So you've got the research piece, the sort of virtual personas piece around AI. I know there's probably a piece around the buying, media buying and the AI optimization, and then the content piece. And I'm kind of interested, a lot of the headlines in Cannes are about AI for content generation, especially with the creative industries and how that relates. Within the agency, which of those three streams is, I guess, moving fastest, or where do you see the progress?
Gosh, I think as an agency, there have been some quicker wins in internal processes and efficiencies. Yeah. So that's definitely been the first part, you know, improving note-taking, as I mentioned, on calls. Some of those sort of pieces and scale. Also, we run large marketing campaigns for clients. So if we're doing a nurture campaign, which has 40, 50 emails in, how do we use AI to help scale and increase that? So we have sort of advanced quite quickly how things are. We still call it human crafted, but augmented with AI. So we might sort of use AI to do a first draft, and then humans review it and move that on. So it gets us to the first draft quicker. So there's those sort of areas that probably forged ahead quicker. And also with my team, from an insights and strategy point of view, quite quickly we adopted just as part of our business as usual, using AI to help with industry insights, other particular insights. But then it's authenticating the sources, it's validating the sources, you know, it's those sort of pieces. Yeah. We spent a lot of time on prompt engineering, which I think is really important. Just really, because it's only as good as the prompt you sort of put in. And I think a lot of people will be finding that you know, you can get a lot of rubbish out. Real skill. So they are at different speeds, I think. And there's some of the bigger projects like synthetic personas, like how it might impact how we develop certain pieces of content. Those will take longer. How we can use, you know, large language models to scale insight, scale reporting will probably take longer than some of these quicker wins.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Suzi, I guess, you know, same question for you. Washington Post, huge content creator, both editorially and commercially. On a kind of macro level, how are you thinking about AI for the business?
Yeah. So as you know, I'm a month in. So
Yes.
I'm still learning an awful lot about it. But I think similarly, the Post has been using AI, in different ways, for a while now. But I think the real change that we've set out is that in our kind of 6-month plan, which we've called it kind of the build it plan and taking us into the next kind of stage of scaling, is that we've been really kind of transparent about the fact that we want AI everywhere. So we want to be thinking about how it does exactly what you say, everything from the planning and the kind of how to make us more efficient and take away the kind of, the kind of more boring parts of people's jobs, but then also how do we embrace it to create brilliant products and experiences and help our journalists do the work that they do. And I think that's where there's a lot of exciting things that are beginning to happen. And the Post has done a great job, and always has done actually, of having our journalists. We've got an AI editor in the newsroom who is really kind of leading how do you bring that together with news, and actually they have a dual report to both the editor and the CTO to make sure that we're learning as quickly as we can and embedding it within the newsroom. So there's lots of great stuff there, and I'm happy to talk through examples of some of the work that they're doing.
Because I guess for the editorial teams, as you say, if there's an editor for AI cross-reporting, it's new skills for editors in terms of both prompt engineering and some of those things, and also to the point earlier, spotting deep fakes or spotting negative AI uses. Is there a training program, or how are you thinking about reskilling the team there?
Yeah, so lots of different training programs, lots of, you can imagine the brown bag lunches that go on, and there's a lot of also trying to have to bust myths, because I think when people first hear about AI, much like the creative industries, there's some concern about how's it actually going to help us. But we've also set out very clear guidelines. So transparency and obviously trust is absolutely crucial at the Post. And so, for example, we've been doing AI summaries on stories. We know that readers want brevity. They want to be able to either choose between the deep read or the kind of quick summary. But when we do that, we label it very clearly as, this summary is AI generated, newsroom reviewed.
Yeah.
And so we're making sure that we have got that kind of sense check against it. But it's also helping journalists actually do the work. And I think that's where it gets really exciting is, if you're thinking about the example they were giving me is kind of covering the Jan 6 riots, right? The amount of time it took to gather all that information, all that photography, all that video, and actually be able to kind of make sure that it all kind of made sense and joined up. Using AI to help do that means that the speed at which they can do their reporting is much, much quicker, and of course we all want that.
That's really interesting. So that's using AI as an enabler rather than a replacement for the editorial skills. I think that's interesting. And you touched on trust.
Yes.
Obviously in a marketing context, trust is vital, especially in the B2B market, I think. How are you, Claire, advising clients around that, I guess, that trust piece? Because I think there's some concerns around whether or not AI is going to damage trust in client brands, or how to approach that.
Yeah, so I guess that comes back to these guardrails we put in place. So firstly, with our clients, we've got their brand. So some clients, it depends what they're deciding to do themselves. Some are a lot more sort of open to AI. Some of our clients are in really sort of highly regulated industries, for example, and will be more risk averse. So we first would go to what their own sort of advisors are telling them. Second one is just to make sure you're authentic to your brand and it reflects your sort of real brand values. We also, when we use AI for a client, it's very transparent. We sort of say that we're using it. Everybody that's using it has been fully trained. So they've gone through our own governance on it. If it's to do with, for example, from a creative point of view, you've got to be very careful around copyright. So understanding what tools are there and the copyright of images, those sort of areas. And from a data point of view also, it's making sure you're not uploading sensitive data, making sure that there's no sort of learning happening from your client's information and client's data. Yeah. So the three guardrails we have basically are the brand, the data, and legal. So we tend to talk to clients about those, and it's also looking at what value they're getting. It's not just about efficiencies; it's sort of what values it's adding. So those are the conversations we're having, and quite often it's really just open round the table conversations. We're running workshops for clients just to help them explore the use cases as well. I think clients are finding, like us, there's a number of internal use cases which are really valuable for them and their marketing teams and departments, but also then how they can adopt it externally. I saw actually at Cannes, I don't know if you guys have seen, but with Pedigree winning one of the awards around their Adoptable campaign, which actually is B2C, but is a great example of using AI as part of that. So that's where we're sort of really seeing it adding so much value. and sort of, exploring those sort of opportunities with clients.
And does that change? Obviously there's guardrails and there's very legitimate data and privacy concerns. We'll speak in a minute about what that might mean for a publisher. But from an agency perspective, does that change how you interact with a media owner or what you're hoping for publishers to give to you? Because in reality, both good and bad, anyone can make content nowadays.
Yeah, they can. Interesting, it was touched on by the previous panel. I don't think there's been a time where trust has ever been more important. And we've seen over quite a long period of time an increase in clients wanting to go direct, use direct media buyers. And that's because of trust of the content and trust of the context within which their ads are going to appear. So we're actually just seeing more use of direct media. We're talking to media, trusted media partners of ours around how they can help produce high quality content, really authentic content. Again, it was touched on the earlier session, the value that can provide. Also, we do talk to media partners about the opportunities of AI. How can that help with targeting? How can that help with more insights around their audiences? And how can that help with our reporting as well?
Yeah.
So whether it's just getting more data, more information, or it's just the speed of getting that through so we can adapt the campaigns.
Yeah, and then, so Suzi, we talked before about the kind of editorial changes, but from a commercial point of view and how you're reacting to client and agency demands, are you starting to use AI in any of those processes already?
Yeah, and I think that the teams think about it as kind of three different things, and it's very similar in terms of kind of the campaign planning and then the execution and then the analysis, and how does that become a kind of virtuous circle. So making sure that we can learn quicker in response to how we, come to the brief, what's worked in the past, how can we get all that data together, but then actually how does that then translate into the execution of an even more effective campaign, and then being able to report it back. So, and then on top of that, of course, as we've talked about creatively, the speed at which you're able to do some of those creatives and the cost at which you're able to do it also begins to change, which is exciting too. Yeah,
and I guess, Washington Post, given your ownership and everything else, you have access to incredible technological resources. Are there any, if you can share with us, things that are in the labs or things that are under development that you think are exciting for the future?
I mean, I think the stuff we're doing around climate's really exciting. So we as a coverage area, it's very important to us. But we've created a kind of, I suppose, a climate bot, for want of a better word. And why we're really excited about it is obviously you can ask questions of this, and you can imagine how it could actually then stretch into other areas, ask the Washington Post, etc. But I think the reason why I'm so excited about it, and actually Phoebe and I were talking about what's the right analogy to use here, and I got to, it's the best, I'm going to try it out on you, was kind of this idea of farm to table, which is the fact that when the Washington Post creates a service like that climate bot, when all the information going in is of the quality that the Washington Post journalism is, or you've only got organic good stuff going in, and then you've also got this concept of recency, right? The speed at which we're able to keep it updated with information. So, and that's quite difficult for other people to do, right? That's quite unique to news, the fact that yes, we've got this quality kind of content, but it's also very up to date because that's what we do. And so kind of that analogy of it's about the quality of what goes in, but it's also the freshness, if you like, of what's going into it, which keeps it really good.
I love that analogy. It's very good. But yeah, it's good, healthy, beautiful editorial data going in that's feeding the monster, the machine. And I think that's one of the things you hear a lot, especially in the B2B space, and Washington Post is obviously reaching very influential senior audiences. A lot of this information is quite specialised. This is, business news. It's in the B2B space. It's perhaps from a very particular sector. And I was wondering, Claire, do you find, is that B2B space moving faster or slower than B2C? Do you think? Because I think there are opportunities there in terms of a very niche piece, but also the use cases you see up and down the beach. A lot of them are still about making pictures of cats, I think. So, where do you see B2B fitting in that?
Yeah, I guess it's sort of what's happening now and then what's happening in the future. I think the first use cases are always more consumer related because that's what a lot of people will be experimenting with, whether it's at work or outside work, and they get the bigger headlines. But I do feel that there's a lot of opportunities there. There's a lot of efficiencies that have been looked at the moment in B2B. Like a scale, most of our clients are talking to us about using AI within production, for example, whether it's to provide agility, whether it's to provide scale. They can now do things globally, whereas before it worked, or they're using AI for localization, for example. So it just suddenly helps with that. But yeah, there's a lot that is coming around the corner, and we just don't know. I mean, change it's happening so fast. So just recently, Actually, I think it was yesterday our innovation director put a post up about the new sort of AI video sort of editing and production, platforms that are coming out now, and a review of those, and then how that opens up the world of high quality video production. Which for B2Bs, which quite often the budgets are quite stretched sometimes because you're working across a number of verticals. So it just opens the doors, I think, for content which is really high quality and incredible.
And I would add to that, I think we're very excited. We've set out as part of this plan that we don't want to be one size fits all, right? We want to be able to create products and services that work for your everyday consumer as well as your business professional. As you said, we've got this amazing audience that we reach across kind of C-suite and also policymakers. But that I'm really excited about when we think about the professional products and services that we want to create that are aligned to our journalism, how we can work with B2B partners to actually think about the amazing data that some of these partners do that then can create great journalism.
Yep.
And I think in my past life, I've had examples of this where we've done it around kind of university rankings, right? So a business that was all about gathering data about universities for universities' use. But we took that and turned that into actually a consumer-facing proposition around how to choose your university. How we can work with partners and actually look at the data that these other companies have and say, like, what's the interesting thing that you could actually now do with that, that you can sell as a product or service to consumers or professionals is really exciting.
It's really about using AI or Gen AI in a specific cordoned off use case rather than a one size fits all approach.
Exactly, and then making the product that's right for that audience off the back of it.
And we'll talk about the future in a minute, but just right now from a Washington Post perspective, the other area, not just the content creation, but the other area where Gen AI is having a big effect is in distribution and how people find the content and how people engage with the content. There's lots of different theories about how that might work out. What's your kind of perspective on where that's going?
Yeah, I think that's the one. It's like everything, isn't it? The kind of the good and the bad, the highs and the lows. Distribution is and has been for the last 15 years, right? The big debate and the challenge in how do you not become disaggregated from the end user, disintermediated, sorry, from the end user. And I think we've now got this real challenge with our kind of ability to retain kind of search and awareness. So if you're going to your Google search, if you are typing in, what's the best restaurant to go to in DC, if what you are getting is now an auto-generated response via Google that, by the way, like talk about not farm to table, you don't know where that's really come from. Or
farm to table with cheese that has
you don't know where this recommendation's come from. But the big reason for us that that's a problem is it's now preventing people from actually clicking through and coming to our websites and reading the quality journalism and obviously supporting journalism financially. So we have got a real challenge to face with how we work with these partners to make sure that we don't lose that visibility, and how we work with them. And we're very up for partnership conversations in that area. But that is a real challenge.
Yeah,
for consumers and business.
Exactly. I think that's a really interesting space, and we'll see what that works out. And I don't know, Claire, it may be too early to tell on this, so the answer might be we're not sure yet. But in terms of, we were just talking through the consumer use case of finding news. But I think specifically in the B2B use case of finding information, or the buying process for B2B customers, do you have a view of how AI might affect that and how they're going to be searching for information?
Yeah, I mean, it's becoming more and more fragmented, and what we're seeing is people do turn to more ChatGPT potentially to search than Google to search. So what that looks like for brands, we're just starting to explore really, because it has huge implications, not just on finding the high quality good content and going through to it, but also the channels that are open to you as a brand to find and engage with your audiences. So it is an area that as an agency we're really looking to explore, and I guess everybody's on a learning curve at the moment of what that looks like. We know we're seeing that change of behaviour. Other things that's important though from a B2B point of view, buying decisions are really complex. They can be quite long, and some research that we did sort of recently showed that most people will turn to their peers to actually get information. So we're still looking at how to use the peer-to-peer network and those sort of pieces. So in doing that, and if their peers are using like a highly trusted media site, that's where they're getting their information, or their stakeholder interviews or thought leadership interviews. Those are types of content that are really highly valued. and actually really help to influence the decision-making process. So irrespective of how they find them, we know that's the type of content that is really highly valued.
It's kind of fascinating the things that don't change as well as that do. You know, as you say, word of mouth and peer recommendation is still a vital part of this.
To actually trust in the buying cycle.
Absolutely. So one last question, which is a tricky one before we hopefully have some questions. But it's tricky because I don't think anyone necessarily knows the answer. But for both of you, where do you see next 12 to 18 months? How much of an effect do you think AI is actually going to have on your business in that short term? How quickly are things changing?
Well, I think that this is very real, right? I was saying to somebody yesterday, 2 or 3 years ago when you came to Canada, it was all about the metaverse, and everyone was still a bit like, really? I think this is a completely different thing. And I've been out of news for 2 years. I've 20 plus years in news. I was out of the business for 2 years, and in that space of time, it's unbelievable to me how much it's moved on. So I think you're going to definitely see in the next 12 to 18 months both the challenges of discoverability, but also the opportunity that comes from both product innovation, journalistic efficiency, and working with clients to deliver even better solutions. I think you're going to feel it's going to feel very real.
It's going to feel very real very quickly.
Yeah.
And are you seeing that together?
That as well. And if you look at the change, like last year was very much about the hype and maybe some pilots and some tests. This year we've very much seen, real commitment from clients using it. Ourselves as an agency, it's reshaping some of the services we have. It's reshaping the skills we have. We've talked about prompt engineering, but there's also opportunities for like the type of data we have access to. Where we're going to be in a year's time, I don't know, but it's going to be a seismic change to the shape, I think, of agencies and marketing. We're looking at it as a real opportunity. I mean, I saw a report the other day to do with Cannes last year. I think 10% of the winners had AI within their their campaigns. It'd be really interesting to understand what that is this year.
How that's moved this year. Yeah. Really interesting how quickly that's going.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So thank you both. In the room, further questions? Yeah, go on, Jack.
I had a question following up on the climate bot. That's quite interesting to me. I'm not sure I've heard that before. So just to make sure I understand, it's the idea of the only information that's being fed into it is the reporting, historical reporting on a certain subject, and then users will go in and ask it questions.
Correct.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you view as, well, I guess 2 follow-up questions is, one, how does the newsroom react to that? Are they how
they're building it? I mean, they are. As I mentioned, Phoebe, who's the kind of AI and strategy editor, who's got this dual report between both CTO and editor. She's at on the kind of the front line in terms of making that work, and obviously making sure that it adheres to all the journalistic standards, has the right transparency, the right information's going in. And obviously it's early days, right? I'm sure there'll be things that we have to tweak as we go along, but I think we're excited about the opportunity to have that trusted source that you can ask. How does that then develop, particularly when you get into voice search and all that goodness? And we're already seeing a lot of actually use of AI in terms of the listen to articles, which has become a really big thing. That's AI generated. But yeah, so that's kind of being led by the newsroom to make sure that it is of the quality and standard that we want it to be.
Did you have a question? I thought I threw a hand. No.
I'm still ruminating. I'll come.
No, that's fine. That's fine too. Sorry. Any other questions in the room?
Just to follow up on that for everyone in the room, as Suzi said, we actually at 4 o'clock have a light bulb lab where Vinit, our CTO,
yes, that's the right place to
will be
come.
going through ClimateBot. It's really interesting, and he did it the other day, and there were tons of questions as you're asking. So if you are interested, I can connect with you after, but it's at 4 o'clock.
Perfect.
Here.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
And a couple of other things that they're working on.
I think
And it's
Phoebe's here as well, isn't she?
She's not. She had to fly out today to be back for the newsroom, but it's literally it's more casual where it's talking, and he's got his computer set up and actually walking through and has ClimateBot and asks. You can actually ask a question, and it will show you how it responds.
Yeah.
So.
Brilliant. Good. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Suzi. Thank you, Claire. And thank you all for coming.